Buenos días. Gracias por venir, como todos los años. Ni qué decir tiene que estamos muy contentos y orgullosos. Los productores, la industria, queremos agradecer al director del Festival de San Sebastián, a José Luis Rebordinos, el escaparate que representa para nosotros su festival. Son 60 títulos producidos o coproducidos, cruzados en las diferentes secciones del festival, lo que nos permite hacer una valoración del estado del cine español en este final casi del 2015. En muchas ocasiones nos lamentamos de la ausencia de films españoles en Cannes. A mí me gustaría que lo viésemos de otro modo. Sin duda alguna, Cannes es la primera gran feria mundial de cine, pero a sus responsables pienso que se les debería caer la cara de vergüenza por no saber encontrar un film español para sus secciones principales, en especial la oficial. Pero yo creo que no hay que darles tampoco mayor importancia. Ellos sabrán si hacen un festival representativo de todas las cinematografías, de las diferentes tendencias que hay en el cine, o son un lobby de poder para proyectar films de sus amigos. También estamos muy contentos porque veo al director del Festival de Málaga, que es el otro gran escaparate de cine español en nuestro país, y también porque tenemos aquí amigos, como es el caso de Televisión Española. Yo siempre digo que sin Televisión Española hay todo un cine español que no se haría. Y ese cine español que hace Televisión Española, que complementa perfectamente al de Mediaset y al de Antena 3, que es
Antena 3, which is more minority, the number of productions, and it is something frankly good for all of us.
Pero me estoy
But
adelantando.
I'm getting ahead of things here, perhaps, and as I'm also very happy of sharing this panel this week with José Portela, who is the president of the Basque Producers and deputy producer, president of FAPAE, and also with Benoit Ginisti, who is the Secretary General of the FIAP, which is a horrible way to pronounce it, FIAP, and who are the producers, international producers. And also because other associations are involved, of friends like the Catalans from Proa, the Andalusians, and further other people who are also here. I would like to José Portela to advance or forward some of the data that we can make a balance of the situation of Spanish cinema. Okay, Ramon, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. And as Ramon was saying, let's give you some figures and data. I'm going to try to be quite specific because I know that sometimes figures drive us a bit crazy if we give you too many. Well, starting with something that Ramon has mentioned. As regards this festival, the Cinemaldia, the San Sebastian Film Festival, Spanish participation is quite significant, for which we are very satisfied. There will be more than 60 Spanish films seen in all the different sections that make up the film festival, but within those 60 films we have 20 titles that are in In the main sections of the festival, there are 11 in the official section, 6 are co-productions with other countries, and 5 completely 100% Spanish films, 7 titles in Sabaltegui, the free zone, and 2 in new directors section. Let's say 20 films in the most important sections in this festival, and 60 Spanish films can be seen over the next few days. And to give you some more information of Spanish cinema in 2015 in this financial year. Well, the number of productions and shooting of films and projects very similar to the figures last year. We should highlight that almost 50% of the productions that have been carried out throughout this year are documentaries, specifically 45.6%. 114 productions have already been shot, of which 59 are fiction films, 52 are documentaries, 3 are animation. Let's say almost 50% of the films that are being shot at present are documentaries. There are co-productions with other countries. I think there's 18 of these 114. The countries that we most produce with and co-produce continues to be France and Argentina, albeit this year there are productions more specifically with Germany, the UK, Sweden, Morocco, Canada, Peru, Mexico and Uruguay. And looking at the box office figures, the amount of audiences, the figure has increased in the first 8 months by 4%. What is Spanish cinema? What is its situation at the present moment? Well, at the beginning of September, we had a share which is very similar to previous years, that is about 12%. It is true that in the last months of the year are quite significant for Spanish cinema. And we believe, and we can say and forward, that we hope to finish this financial year with a share of over 20%. Last year, it was 25%, if you remember, a year which was a bit exceptional, and we believe that we can achieve 20% by the end of the year, because these are the most important things. Some of them are being seen. Regresión, My Great Night, and there are other titles that are on this in the film festival will be premiered in the rest of the year, and we will have an impact, like Palms in the Snow or Palmeras en la Nieve, and the 8 Catalan surnames, ocho apellidos catalanes. Okay, in the month of September, the data is quite positive, 40% of the box office. The previous week it was over 30%, so therefore I don't think if we're going over the top. I'm from Bilbao, but that doesn't mean anything. They say I don't want to boast, but there will be over 20% this year, so therefore the figure is quite good, that we get figures very similar to last year, which is good for all of us. The most seen films, you probably know which they are. Perdiendo el Norte with 1.6 million an audience, another Ahora o Nunca, second, 1.4. Atrapa la Bandera, more than 1.1 million. It's still in the film theaters, so therefore the figure will probably improve. And that's all I would like to say. If there are any questions, if any more information you may require, or to clear up, I would be glad to do so. So I'm going to give the floor now to Ramón Colom. Jose has given us figures so that we can analyze, quantitatively speaking, what has to be done. But I'd like to go further in depth into the qualitative phenomenon. Slowly but surely, the films are finding their audiences, and this is what makes me happy. It makes me happy to detect the good atmosphere that exists in the cinema industry in Andalusia, and in the Basque Country and in Catalonia, despite all of the problems, economic problems, due to cuts that have been made. But there is a lot of strength which stems from a very positive creation, which is still latent as well. Nevertheless, I can say the same about the community of Madrid, for example, and other communities who also want to make their films as much as they can. But what I think is should be highlighted is that Spanish citizens are enjoying themselves when they see Spanish films. If they didn't, that would mean that we're making very bad or poor films, and something has changed when they turn up and have a good time. Last year, for example, in the film theatres. Last year, essentially, we were saying that the figure that was almost 25% of market share was due to the fact that that year was anomalous because there had been some specific, very important films and titles, and we said that if we took the phenomenon of 8 Basque surnames, Ocho Apellidos Vascos, the film, let's see how we're able to give a similar figure. So therefore, I think if we exceed and surpass that 20%, far away from those 12% that we were achieving years back, that means that things are improving. If there weren't any good films, despite how many of the programmers of the festivals and directors of the festivals, there wouldn't be any Spanish cinema in the film festivals. There wouldn't be any. There wouldn't be 60 film titles here at this film festival. I think this is important, and that's why I go a bit further on. I go beyond the quantitative figures. The important for us is to increase audiences, to increase our box offers, and the measures, for example, the major studios fight to distribute Spanish films, and obviously not all of them with the same fervor, but we must highlight that change that's taking place, which can be attributed to the previous presidents of FAPAE and the people who were in charge of FAPAE in the past. We have to thank Pedro Pérez, we have to thank Gerardo Herrero, Eduardo Campoy, Fabia, who's also here with us, because they worked, and it was difficult for them to make that cinema possible, which we are enjoying at present. Are we going over the top, or we don't want to sound as if we're triumphant, but we would like to say that those changes, which are still quite incipient or just starting, that we can't lose them, we can't let them go by. That is, there's also another fact that occurs, and that is, while we achieve certain objectives that the people prior of this in charge of FAPAE and also the administration, others are confronting us, and we have to confront them, we have to address them now. And what I'm referring to now is that cinema or films, the film world has entered into the digital media. And if you'll allow me, before Benoit tells us about all of the problems that are derived from the entry of cinema and films and digital problems, I would like to remind you of give you 2 or 3 ideas as regards to those of us upon which we are building our discourse at present. Well, let's see. We are living in a very media-type culture and located in an attractive mediatic or media area, which is not everything is beautiful and neither is it positive. The knowledge that we achieve of the net, like Nicolas Carr mentions, is quite superficial. And a friend of mine who's a teacher at the university where I have taught for many years, Carlos Ruiz, expresses it with Seneca's sentence, which is 2,000 years old, and is in the letters of un Stoikov. Seneca says, to be everywhere is like being nowhere. And that's one of the problems that our society has, our digital society has. We live through a communication and cultural revolution where what we have known now as a fundamental right are being reduced. Why do I mention this? And it's for a single reason, and that's because those fundamental rights are those that sustain precisely the state of law. The internet has become a place where it is completely impune, and TV is the cultural production universe which is most subjected to commercial pressure, with its quite logical background of market laws, economic aspects, and entertainment, and so on. All of this introduces changes, or brings in changes in other universes, which are not strictly that of films or of TV. And that media area is like a big bazaar where there's a bit of everything from our culture and other cultures. And Paolo Basile was right, I believe, when he said that, or he thought, that the media do not transmit values and their only intention is to sell products. And I agree with this, but perhaps he forgets, all of those that think like that forget that images, narratives do contain value, and the opening door for this is made up by what we call entertainment. That is to say, when we go to the film theatre to entertain ourselves, it's much more important than what we simply look for or we're simply seeking. That is why the new ways of watching cinema are important in the makeup of what the industry itself is. We are, with our colleagues, we are from throughout the world, we're entering into that media society where the problems start to emerge and they start to be placed upon the table. And the person I believe that knows most about this is Benoit Ginesti, who we've asked to come along so that the explanations upon what's happening can be told, he can tell us about it, and in turn you can have a first-class interlocutor and to try to explain what are the complications that exist. A while back I was talking to a colleague of yours that the law that we have passed along with the Spanish government is all well and good, but it's a law that most of all will last about 2 years old. Whoa, how do you do this? You're asking for more because we've just passed it now. No, we're asking for different things. Okay? And secondly, there's a very important issue that I will clear up later. It's like a cry of war, shall we say, and I'll give the floor to Benoit later. This is something that we've forgotten, and this is what I'm saying. The content matter are the king of the audiovisual industry, and the media through which we transmit that content matter are the queen. We can say that the contents are the queen and the media are the king. It's the same thing. But content and media should go hand in hand, and the media have to be quite clearly agree upon the fact that media has to transmit this or broadcast it. In the last few years, and thanks to the media pressure of some media groups in Spain, there's a totum revolutum in all of this, where the media make content matter. The content matter, some of them don't find a channel so that it can be seen by audiences, and that's one of the issues that we have to resolve. But Benoit is going to tell you in detail the problems that are derived from that media society, that digital society in which we are involved in, especially in Europe. Thank you, President Coron. Thank you. It's a pleasure. It's an honor to be with you here in this press conference of FAPAE. I'm French. My Spanish is a little difficult. That is to say that to understand, but the issues are so important that I'm going to address today. I'm going to read what I'm going to share with you on this document. So therefore, and Ramon, you were talking about the challenges for cinema producers and TV producers as regards to the Brussels agenda and the European Union. And you're right in what you say. With the decision that the Euro Commission adopted in the month of May upon the European strategy of a single digital market, the audiovisual sector in Europe is confronting an historic threat in our model of financing and distribution in order to sustain itself. The strategy of the Commission, its objective is to address the territoriality of the rights and the freedom of to negotiate in the audiovisual sector, which is called the value chain in English. I'm not too sure how this is translated into Spanish, which are fundamental in order to finance and provide the necessary exclusivity of the local distributors, we can call them national distributors, to invest a minimum guaranteed amount, that is to say, which is the blood, shall we say, of our industry, and marketing, P&A, for the promotion of the films or the promotion of the TV programs. The entire economy of cinema and the audiovisual world is built upon the principles of exclusivity and territoriality. To speak more clearly, financing and the distribution of the future European films and TV programs could be at risk in the next few years with the current European policy. And that is why that FIAF, which is the International Federation of Cinema and TV Producers in Europe and throughout the world, we are, with all of our members, and particularly European members, with the FAPAE, we're in the front line vis-à-vis this issue. The producers don't oppose themselves to the single digital market. And this is an answer to what you were saying due to the fact that you were mentioning before. We see the digital window as an opportunity, but the producers firmly believe that a modern copyright, if we need it, should promote creativity and investment in production and distribution and commercialization. In the future, we have to be able to recover our investment and guarantee the return to all of the title holders of right, including obviously the producers, and in turn, a modern copyright should also promote a better and greater access to the audience, guaranteeing that the European situation would not provide consumers less possibilities in terms of content matter and the variety within the digital platforms that exist. There are 3,500 digital platforms in Europe at present. And what is it going to be in the future with this European proposal? As a conclusion, the audiovisual sector and the cinema itself wants contracting and commercial freedom in the future in order to develop the best possible financing and distribution for each film or audiovisual program. We have to say that in Brussels that a TV program is a prototype. It's more important than understanding that there's a specific, particular financing for each of the audiovisual programs. That's why we urge the Spanish government to defend this freedom of contract and of commercialization, as has been done by the French government, German government, British government, in the context of the single digital market strategy. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Benoit. Not all of you have to be experts in in the business of filmmaking or films, but I would like to give you an overview of how it works. When a producer, and that wants to shoot or wants to address a certain film, he seeks a distributor, a national distributor, and someone, an international distributor, so that they can exploit that films, be it in the domestic market as well as in the foreign markets. And that distributor gives the producer what we call a minimum guarantee, an MG. And then the distributor has to invest in copies and above all in marketing, that is to say, other money. And this is done initially from a principle of territoriality and language. Let's say a film is sold for Spain, a film is sold to France and Belgium, or Belgium only, or Germany to Lithuania, and so on. And the entire industry, not only the European industry, but also the American industries, do it that way. That is, say, we all do it that way. What the European community wants, and that's the big thing that terrifies us, is that that sale is not done country by country, but it should be done globally. That is to say, whoever buys the film has to have the sufficient enough money to buy all of the countries in Europe, to exhibit it, to show it in all of Europe and all the countries. Who can do that? Well, obviously, it's either it won't be done or it will be done in certain works by certain platforms that we can say at present. We can say a few of the names. This is a world that is going to be controlled by Netflix, Amazon, Google, and so on, because and the Luxembourg investment funds, who are the only ones that can really have sufficient enough money to, so that that economy that they are addressing from a global standpoint can end up working or not. So in the coming month of October, Netflix comes to Spain, and while in France and in other countries they demand a whole series of conditions and terms and rules of play, for example, investment in French creative works. In Spain, there's nothing foreseen yet on behalf of the government. The market rules, if the market's free, they can come to an agreement and so on and so forth. But there will not be cinema. We have to say this, that is to say, what the free television has done so far, a lot of this has to go on to pay TV, because that is the future of TV. And if pay TV doesn't want it, it won't buy any film. And even more, there'll be another problem, and that, I think, it will be that way. That is to say, those platforms will offer American films and Spanish films, or French films in France, or Italian films in Italy. But Spanish films won't be seen in Italy, nor Italian films in France, and quote unquote. That is to say, on the one hand, they are seeking the globalization of the commercializing films, but on the other hand, automatically they limit them. It's limited because it's not going to be possible, nor economically, nor technically speaking, to do so. Let's go back to that war cry. The content matter are the kings of audiovisual, and the media are the queen. If we give importance to one of the two, not to both of it at the same time, we're not doing a very good service to the audiovisual industry. In Spain, up until now, due to political reasons, we've only borne in mind the windows to the channels, to the Queen, and not all equally. Unfortunately, we have to say that the state seems to act against public TVs. And as we said last year, we believe that apart from the fact that in our country there's Mediaset, there's another one called Antena 3, and there's another one which is called Telefónica. These are three different poles. There has to be a pole that can work in equal conditions than the other channels, which are not Spanish TV in the current concept, or Televisión Española, but public TVs, that they can work amongst themselves, that they can come to offer independently or jointly works, specific works, to the citizens. The broadcaster, the legal framework has to be changed, because the new way of seeing audiovisual works will not only be done via TV. The duopoly that we have in Spain will suffer, and suffer quite a lot, until it becomes something which is completely different to what it is now. We want to give it support, we in FAPAE, that of content matter, because they need the king. The king. It has to be the king. If they do not have sufficient with the marvelous benefits that they have at present, if they want to be the king and the queen altogether, we have to, this situation must come to an end, because it's necessary to rebalance the audiovisual system. We need the state and the government to listen to us. It's a bad moment now with elections that are just around the corner in 2 months' time, but we need to do this for one single reason, and that is that the copyright is a cornerstone in European legislation, which generates 7 million jobs and which contributes approximately with 509 billion euros to the GDP of the European Union in all of the different countries. We want to insist, and I want to finish by saying this, if you now in the questions, the three of us can answer your questions, with our thesis, with our war cry, that the content matter is the king, and that the channels, the windows for broadcasting, TV, cinema theatres, and home screens on TV, they are the queen, and that both of them have to work hand in hand. Thank you very much.
Allí la primera.
First question over there, please.
Hola, sí.
In the USA, for many years, many decades now, they tried to stop that monopoly with an antitrust, anti-monopoly law in which they obliged the producers to leave the distributors to leave and get rid of the broadcast or the cinema theatres. The same thing is changing now. We're changing the distributors for the platforms and the cinema theatres for home TV screens. This is reduced to an antitrust law. Is that the case or not? Benoit? I would say, but Benoit can answer here.
Are you referring actually, to the online windows? Is that what you are referring to? Yeah. Well, I'm not a lawyer myself, so I will not respond to antitrust, no antitrust, because I'm not able actually to respond to that. What I can say today is basically, that we do believe that our industry, become obviously, much more complex with a very large variety of business models today. But the truth is that you have actually the value chain, and the value chain at the moment remains exactly the same. You have actually a producer. You may have award sales for film. You may have actually, also for audiovisual programs, award sale. And then you have distributors. The distributors, at national level could aggregate rights, for theaters regarding film, home video, television, pay TV, free TV, catch-up TV, and then transactional VOD, subscription-based VOD, and so on and so on. So what I'm saying today, just to say that we need to be in a position, actually, to define what is the best strategy for a film. And actually, those knowing exactly what is the best strategy are not lawmakers. What we need is to be in a position to keep all the freedom, actually, in the future, to define if we want to sell a film, some specific digital rights to a company present in different member states in Europe. We are, the law today, authorized to do it first. And it's very important to precise, and then give us the freedom to do so. But if we want to give our film to a Spanish distributor, we'll be actually investing in P&A in order, to make the film known in Spain and people interested by the title. And obviously, this investment in marketing will also be beneficial for the distribution online. We want to keep this freedom to do so. And we want to keep actually local distributors able to promote precisely and appropriately, the title in the different countries. We do not believe that a French distributor could be able, to promote properly a title in Spain because they do not know, actually, how the Spanish viewers are attracted by the title. So it's just to say so.
Hola.
Hi. Could you value... Yesterday, there was a certain controversy with the receiving of the Cinematography National Prize to Mr. Fernando Trueba, who declared that he didn't feel himself Spanish, but at the same time, people reminded him that he had received 4 million euros from the Spanish government as a concept of a grant. Not him, but his films, at least 4 million euros to help amortization. Can you talk about these controversies that have emerged? Well, I'm sorry I wasn't there when the prize was awarded yesterday, so therefore that's first of all. It's true that I have heard about this controversy that took place, and we know what happened. I think that Fernando Trueba is very free to say whatever he wants. It's a different thing whether we like it or we like it or not. But I don't think it's an argument which is right. Well, how come you don't consider yourself Spanish if we're giving you 4 million euros? So apart from this, we will have to see the context, what he said, what he explained, so on and so forth. I don't believe that Fernando Trueba considers himself a patriot. They said we had a coffee the other day and we talked about the controversy, and I believe that sometimes one has to understand things in the pure context of the thing, and as they said, and not take things out of context. I think that things have been taken out of context. I think that his reference to what Fernando Trueba said was due to the name of the title, National Prize, that he thought it was something with him that he has not felt identified. The word national sometimes makes us very fearful of this because we've got a very recent history, a recent past that's happened to us. But to talk about whether he's made 4 million euros, he's been given 4 million euros to produce his films, and then certain titles he's brought from abroad to here, I think that we thank him very much for the films that Fernando Trueba has made. He has made the films in Spanish. They are films that have been seen all over the world. And to say that he's a person that he would like the borders to disappear and then for their borders to exist, I don't think this is something out of this world. It's quite logical. He prefers borders not to exist than to talk about borders and nations and states that limit creativity. And that's it. Full stop. It came out from the title, the prize, the national prize. So it sounded, that's where it stems from. I don't think that we should take it out of context. Let's hope he continues to make films and we continue to enjoy Fernando this morning. I don't want to reveal anything new, but you can see the tone of the controversy. He has said that he wants to offer a role to the government delegate in the Basque country, who I think is very expressive, having seen how he reacted yesterday when he was listening to Fernando Trueba. Let's not give it any more importance than what it's worth. There's something that I would like for FAPAE. I would like to mention the following: the role that the telecommunications companies have had in order to have a competitive edge and a critical mass that will enable them to do business was to open up the data channel more and more. Now they enjoy 100 megas and 4G. It'll be 200 and something in the future. But that as an objective, it's for the content matter to travel, but games as well. But this is another business that I'm not going to talk about. But the content matter should travel as fast as possible. Okay? And undoubtedly, if this is through a legal platform that buys the content matter and they distribute it, well, that's all very well and good because we all benefit. But all benefits that it's gone through, that these companies have had leaving freely allow the content matter to go by or to go through, and they should sit down with them to make some sort of incentive or grant to the industry, which I believe is deserved and just, because they have been taking benefit of the industry practically free or allowing it to be done. This is one of the arguments, the most controversial arguments or issues that always exist. After the benefits they've achieved with all the piracy that's gone on and all of the films, and with all of the downloading of films through illegally, why don't they? At least they should contribute something throughout the whole chain of the business. I would say, albeit we don't have an official standpoint or position on this presently, my intuition tells me that in the future, in the not too distant future, not only Spain, but countries within the European Union are going to try to make cinema to be totally or partially financed through a tax of taxes or duties to connections to the internet, as has tried to be done by the Catalonian government, albeit they've made an appeal to the Constitutional Court. Let's see what happens. I don't know what Benoit thinks about this.
I think, there are 28 countries in Europe, and there are 28, different practices regarding how the audiovisual sector, is financed. The truth is that we need actually to have, the proper regulation at international level first, but also at European level to be in a position, to make money through exclusive rights. That means, the capacity to remain in control, to generate money from TV broadcasters, to generate money, from distributors and so on. I know, obviously, that solutions exist, in Spain, and I know that those solutions that are combining exclusive rights and collecting societies, for instance, have been successful in making the Spanish industry, sustainable and creative. At the same time, it's true that in other European countries, actually, this kind of combination does not exist, for instance. So if you ask me, as representative of an international organization, I have to acknowledge the fact, that there are different models, in Europe and worldwide.
Nuestra hipótesis de trabajo.
The work hypothesis of FAPAE at present is that the cost of a film in the future, in the immediate future, that is to say, is going to be 35% by the state, and this is well, 35 or 40%. Another 35% will be provided by the television channels, but with an investment more by the pay TVs and less so by the open channels, the free channels, shall we say. And the other 35% will be paid by charge to the producer, that is to say, that what the film, the bio die, the theatrical, and also there's also another very important issue from my point of view, and that is international sales. And that is why it's important. What we were talking about before is important as regards to the international commercialization of any audiovisual work. We believe that more or less that's with different, because this could be done gradually, that's what the financing is going to be of each and every one of the audiovisual works, reducing, by the way, reducing the role or the investment of the state. We have to finance, each of us have to finance ourselves with our own means, and that's what we're working upon in order to achieve a balance where we need the TV channels, television channels to come to an agreement to as well. Yes, allow me, Fabio. There's something that I haven't, figure that I didn't mention before, which is very significant. Of the productions carried out this year, the budgetary average of those shootings is 1.3 million euros. That's say we're talking about that 5 years ago, the average was 3.2 million euros. And I said 52% of the films being shot have a budget under 1 million euros, 36% the mean budget between 1 and 3 million, 7% between 3 and 5 million, and only 5% of over 5 million euros as a budget. Obviously, they have some windows and sources of finance sources that have disappeared, and others have substituted those, as you mentioned before, quite obviously. The consumption of cinema is the greatest that we've had in history. Without it, it's turning around the financing of these films, and this is noticed upon the budget, the average budget of those productions. More than half of them are documentaries, obviously, that are under 1 million euros, as you can see. Sorry, we can't hear this gentleman without a microphone. I'm sorry. Yes, quite clearly. But without going through the box office and play, I think Fabia and Oscar were going to say. Oscar first, okay. A question for Ramon. You go further in depth into the arrival of Netflix. What perspectives do the producers have, or what it's going to be in a country with high levels of piracy as we have in Spain? And if I understood you correctly before, it's going to affect that duopoly of Mediaset and A3 Media, and it's going to affect the diversity of the films that we're going to be able to see. I could tell a joke, but it's something we're a bit behind times. But for the first time, a few months ago, we maintained official conversations, or held official conversations with the body that links commercial TV channels and private TV channels in Spain. So therefore, the conversations with Netflix have not taken place yet. And we would like to know what the state thinks about all this. We don't know. There's a diversity of opinions here. In the Ministry for Culture, they think one thing, and I think in the Ministry of Industry, they are thinking something different. So therefore, this is a horrible damage and harm because there are several doors that we have to go through to knock on. And I don't know what the Vice Presidency of the government thinks, who is a key element in this story. But let's go even further. I don't even know what the political parties think. Just prior to the election campaign, where they're going to carry out an offer, including issues that have to do with the media. It is very difficult to value what's going to happen. I think that initially, and as usual, nothing is going to happen, and then as time goes by, something will happen. What is true, and I thank God Benoit is next to me to hand the baton over to him. But TV, as we know at present, is going to change. Okay, it's going to change radically. That is to say, it's not going to be too strange that in the not too distant future, the sports channel of Spanish television, we'll have to see it via the internet in splendid conditions, or the films that they may make with the films that they have, that they broadcast. Different scenarios are opened up, and Mediaset and Antena 3 will do exactly the same. It's quite curious. There are things that draw my attention. For example, Mediaset and Antena 3 want more channels. And this tender now, they need more channels, it seems. And when I see those channels, I'm very perplexed, and I think, why do they need them? Because if all the channels, they're showing the same stuff. And so then there's no production, no new production that are being offered to those channels. So therefore, I think that we're making a mistake here, because what we've got instead of a dialogue are soliloquies enclosed into our own castle, and we have to talk to other people. Before, when I saw Manuel, the situation of Canal Sur in Andalusia, we can't have a TV channel with the anguish, economic, financial anguish that they're going through, and design that they're going through at present down there. It's not possible. We have to fix all of this up for once and for all, and the sooner the better. I haven't answered you, but I give you an answer, but I don't have an answer. I think that things will change. The open TV channels will suffer. Why? Well, because when a film makes it to an open TV channel, apart from the fact that the channel has participated in it, or whatever, half of Spain have already seen it, or three-quarters. Okay, so therefore, that will change things. And even the Americans, when they open up those windows that it seem to be cut up like very thin pieces of ham, they will have to change things, because the films after the Biodie and the pay-per-view and all of the chain, they make it to the open TV channels 4 years later, and they are completely exploited by that time. So therefore, all of this is what's going to change. And in all of this, we want to be involved in this. We don't want to get involved in the network of channels. We don't want to be the queen. We want to work like the king and go hand in hand with the queen, as I said before. I'm sorry, we can't hear this gentleman. I can't hear you, Antonio. I'm very sorry, I still can't hear him. Benoit can explain what the French government does to defend its entrepreneurs, to its citizens, and to its cultural interests. So you can see what democratic governments do that are developed in Europe. Could you explain that, Benoit, the position that they've had with Netflix? Yes, I understand.
I mentioned the fact, that there are differences, in Europe, and it's true that France, we all know that France, just after World War II, has been set up a system where the system, is indeed, raising some, the word is not taxes, but some contribution to benefit to the local producers and production, and also distribution for both, actually national, domestic, and European, and some other actually title coming from several countries. But anyway, so just to say, that indeed, all discussion around how to include in this system all the newcomers has been indeed, extremely, extremely active in France. So I think indeed, that when I was saying that we are, you said that it was a revolution. I'm saying it was not in my text, but I'm saying that the market is just nascent. Looking actually, at the television there today, the market is moving incredibly. And I said, that the ways actually, that contents are viewed today is changing every day. So we are really in a nascent market. So it's true that in France, in Spain perhaps today and tomorrow, and some other countries, depending obviously the way they are organized at national level, there are some question marks, definitively. Yeah.
Fabia, por fin.
Thank you. Yes, it does work. Two things very quickly. On the one hand, to congratulate you for the presence of Spanish cinema in the festival, and also for the market share that you've achieved, which was absolutely unthought of in the past, to achieve 20-25% of a share of Spanish cinema. Nevertheless, I want to talk about the paradox that Portela mentioned before, that it's from my point of view, that in a very good market share year, the budgets are very small, and this means that the films are very difficult to be competitive abroad, and this, and under my opinion, is making our cinema weaker. And the new model, you've got to tie it up very well so for it to be different. And following the discussion that Antonio Perez mentioned with Benoit, I would like to mention is that with the community initiatives that are so important, like the audiovisual services, cable TV, and e-commerce, there's been a transfer of power of what is national to what is international, but not only France, but in the DGs that make political decisions in the European Commission as well. That is to say, the content matter issue, contents, is not that, doesn't have that much weight in the people that have to make decisions and review the current directives. What I was afraid of was as the pirate, the person who in the pirate party, for example, was defending copyright. And a conference that I heard the other day of the director of the DG Connect, who is reviewing what's going to happen with the contents in the future in the European Union, I see that the only thing that is important is portability and no limits to territories. And please, ladies and gentlemen, if we don't resolve how the contents are produced, we're going to lose the king and the queen, because everything's going to be provided from abroad, and we're in the middle of things, and I think we have to do something here and now. Thank you very much, Fabia. Would you like to answer the first part that refers to you? Yes. Just one of the points that Fabia says there, the importance that we have to tie the new model up very well, and that is to say, it is true that we are negotiating changes in the legislation that regulates the aid provided to the film industry. Let's hope those changes are for the better, but they will be totally useless if the amount of the economically doesn't vary. Let's say we have a budget at present of aid to the film industry, which is ridiculous, worse than 10 years ago, when the cinema or filmmaking law, which was in force and was approved unanimously by the Parliament, there was a memorandum of how it should evolve over the next few years, and we were saying that this year the amount of for the film industry is about 100 million euros, and we're just over 40. So therefore we can change and regulate and make changes of all types. I don't know why, but we're always changing laws. We need a good law and a solid law, and to believe in it, if we believe in culture, if we believe that within culture the film industry is important for the development of a country, well, obviously we have to wager in favor of it. We're talking about the situation in France, for example. I think the amount of the CNC is 700 million euros, if I'm not mistaken, 700 million euros vis-a-vis 40 million. the wager. We not talk about the law and changing laws and changing the terms and how it's written. We have to improve it and adapt it to the present day situation and everything that's going on. But obviously, I usually say this is seen with figures and the zeros after the number when we see the state budget. That's where we see what the amount of how much and what's the weight and the importance of people wagering in favor of our industry or not. I would like to add some and more information, and that is that the Cannes Film Festival, the organization of the Cannes Film Festival, the budget is higher to the budget of all the Spanish cinema for the entire year, just the Cannes Film Festival. So I can say that's quite obvious. And as regards to the second part of your question, where here we've invited Benoit to be here today because we believe that this is an issue that overwhelms us in the industry, because what's at stake here is not only a sector that generates industrial and economic wealth, but it affects the foundations of fundamental rights, and they are the foundations of the state of law that we live in. So nevertheless, having said this, to value all of this, we've got to be very sensitive, and it's not have to be too extreme, that is to say, where there are some people in charge in our government that seem to not have that sensitivity. Because I say this because I hope someone will ask me by the VAT of 21% that we pay, and I don't know what to say. Well, we believe that it's excessive, but we've said that so many times that at the end of the day, I will start to believe that I've not believed up until now that 21% VAT is a type of punishment that we're receiving, and that affects not so much the film industry, but it affects theatres and other cultural industries as well. Hi. I would like to ask you about those changes in the legislation. And one of the issues that was pending were the criterion to provide for the concession of those grants or subsidies. How are things going? Have we advanced a lot? No, things are going very slow. I'm not going to hide this from you. We thought that the administration had talked about this more internally, but there's little time left, and we should have advanced. But there are some criteria that we all think is quite logical. To talk in general terms, a film that is going to receive a grant, it's going to be forwarded, for example, it has to have some guarantees that it's going to be made. So therefore it's necessary for that project that's submitted has to have guarantees that it's got a significant part of the financing, and that whoever's requesting that aid or applying for it is solvent enough to make the production itself. Some commitments also of the distribution and exploitation, the number of film theatres, P&A expenditure, for example. So therefore we agree upon all this. The problem is that you say, well, okay, these films that are under those conditions, well, they receive this grant. Well, okay, we'll say, well, okay, they'll receive the grant if the money arrives. What money are we talking about? Because that's where the crux of the matter lies. If the current system, one of the problems was the famous prorating. That is to say, if we didn't have sufficient money one year, we prorate it to the films that have already been made. If you wanted to get X, you get X minus 20%, because that year there was less money provided. But that forwarded money grant would not be given, because if we're prorating beforehand, that is to say, forwarding it, that is to say, what could happen is that films that are we can verify the financing. For example, a film is interested, has been approved by the Cinema Committee of Spanish TV and some other autonomous TV channel, for example. And I see that you mentioned there's also Valencia and Galicia here present today. What might happen is a film, after after going through those trials and tribulations and submitting and applying in the committees, all of a sudden it comes along and said, okay, it fulfills all of the requirements, but there's no money, sufficient money to give it to the films, so therefore you're not going to give it to it. We have to change the regulations. I think we have to adapt ourselves to the current conditions, but it has to be a regulation or legislation that has a sufficient amount of money to be able to do it with an amount of 40 million euros for all Spanish, the entire Spanish film industry. Well, obviously, very few films and many films with under 1 million euros, as a budget of under 1 million euros, we're talking about productions and films that obviously are not going to be, they're going to make it commercially too much. Neither are they going to make it internationally. They're going to be very local productions, and some of them for TV channels and so on. So therefore, if we want to have an influence, it's necessary to make those legislative changes, but with sufficient amount of money at the same time. But obviously, we're coming back. We're prior campaign election. Let's talk about the following government that will have to do this, that comes into force after the elections. We're going to make changes, but we don't know what the amount is going to be. But it's very difficult to value, to assess what the system is going to end up looking like. I'm going to say something that hasn't been foreseen, but I think that it must be said, and that is, everything is quite complicated, but now there's an added complication. That's the enormous power of the tax civil servants, the people that work in the tax department. And that we're trying to work with everyone in the meetings. We advance quite a lot in the meetings we hold when we negotiate with the civil servants in the Ministry for Culture, but there's always the great fear of what might happen with the Internal Revenue Department, and we're going to see what happens as time goes by, because they sometimes have the faculty to interpret things based upon a different criteria. Okay, and that quite possibly is another one of the problems that makes it difficult for us to come to an agreement, because everything has to be so closely tied up and so clear that a time comes when it's not possible to do anything. Last question, I'm being told, okay? No, last question. Well, I want to... Is there a last question? It seems not. Well, I would like to say something here, and I believe that the Spanish film industry feels the production industry is concerned by all of the problems that take place in our country, not only in our country too, by the way. PROA has made a proposal that we're going to support, we're going to back, and that is to take some initiatives. We've got 2 or 3 on the table at present with regards to the refugees. Like what can't happen is that the refugees are subjected to a film that can be commercialized, and that we have to be indifferent to that problem. So therefore, within a few weeks' time, we will tell you what the final solution is going to be that we have taken vis-a-vis the issue of refugees, and that will obviously come to our country. And that's all. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.